It's my little friends. This, oh, by the way, welcome to the Voodoo Garden. My name is Ray. I am your host, and I will very soon be having co-hosts to the Voodoo Garden. This is my incubator. Yeah, this is actually an incubator. It's not a chicken egg incubator. I believe this is a reptile egg incubator. It's called the Exoterra. I've had this for a few years, and I haven't used it in quite a long time, but this year, let me sit down. I stare at these things. I've been gathering up eggs for the last couple weeks from my chickens, because now the rooster and the chickens are doing what nature wants them to do, and I have fertile chicken eggs. I've decided, since my flock has slowly gone down over the years, it's time to boost it back up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to incubate chicken eggs and raise my own chickens. Yes, I am. I one time purchased chickens from online sources. I decided I didn't want to do that. I had a bad experience, and I think I might have told you about that. I received a box of dead chicks, because the place that I ordered them from, I won't mention the name, they mailed them in June during a heat wave, when we were having a heat wave in Minnesota. The birds arrived stone cold dead, and the sad part was there was only one chick left alive. And I opened up the box. There was one chick standing on the bodies of all of its brothers and sisters, and it broke my heart. It literally broke my heart to see that. I'd never really thought about it that deeply, about what these little critters go through in order to be my pets, to be my companions. I decided right then and there, I'll never do this again. And I never have. I have not ordered birds through the mail since that day. The last batch of chickens that I got, the ones that I have here, I purchased at a local farm store. Now, I believe they ordered theirs somewhere in Iowa, and they're delivered pronto. They're not delivered through the mail. They're actually delivered by delivery person, because they order so many of them. And that's a little bit better on them, but still, it's not good enough for me. So I thought, you know what? I got all the means to do this myself. Why not do it myself? And that's what I decided to do. I gathered the eggs up, and now this was in March that I started gathering these eggs. And in March here, it was very, very cold. So what I had to do was I had to go out to the chicken coop first thing in the morning and wait for these chickens to lay their eggs. And as they laid their eggs, I gathered them up, because when the temperatures are 30 degrees, chicken eggs will not last. Once you refrigerate a fertile chicken egg, it becomes infertile. It will not incubate and hatch after that. So what I had to do was I had to get the eggs before they cooled down. A chicken would lay an egg and then just walk off the nest. They don't actually sit on the eggs until they're ready to incubate them. So this was kind of a struggle for me, and I gathered 15 eggs from various chickens. I got a bunch of different kinds of chickens, so I don't know what I have here. I do know that the male is what's called an Americana or Araucana. Those names seem to be interchangeable, although I don't believe the species is exactly the same. It's just that's what the hatcheries call them. So I don't really know what my rooster is. All I know is that he's what's called the Easter egg chicken. The hens will lay different colored eggs, blue, green, tan, a few different colors, and that's the male of the version. So what it is I have a male Americana, but I have black Australorp females, I have a couple Americana females, a golden something. I don't know what they are. All I know is I got a bunch of different kinds of chickens. So the eggs that I got are probably a good mismatch of eggs, and that suits me fine. I'm going to have a lot of mutts. What I did was I tossed them in here, and they need to incubate at 100 degrees. This incubator is fan forced, and it keeps the temperature at 100 degrees. You can see that it goes down to 97. That's just the cycle as it cools down. Then it'll kick back on and kick it right back up to 100 degrees. So that's actually perfect for these eggs. Twice a day, I turn the eggs. That's what you have to do. You have to turn the eggs. This does not have an automatic egg turner to them. You have to turn the eggs yourself. And we'll open up the door here. It's a very well sealed door. What I do is I take the eggs from the chickens. I don't wash them or rinse them off. When you're going to incubate eggs, I'm just going to give you a quickie on egg incubation. I'm not going to do a complete tutorial. When you take eggs from a chicken and you're going to eat them, you rinse them off and then put them in the refrigerator. that will keep them cold and they'll store for a long time. When you're going to incubate the eggs, you do not want to rinse them off because they have this protective coating that, although I don't want that on my eggs in the refrigerator, you do want that on your eggs when they're incubating because that is a protective coating to keep bacteria out. What I do is I place them in here at a slight angle. They sit naturally this way with the butt end, which is the fat end, slightly up. This simulates how they would sit in a nest, a natural nest, with the butt end slightly up. Now throughout the day, maybe a few times a day, the chicken who's sitting on them will raise up on her feet, take her beak, and turn these eggs over so that they get an equal amount of heat, because she supplies the heat. And they incubate evenly on all sides. Well, what I do is I put an X on one side and nothing on the other side. At 5 o'clock in the morning, when I wake up, I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, I take these eggs, and what I do is I just flip them over this way. That brings the X side up. I do it with all of them, and then at 5 o'clock in the evening, I flip them back the other way, which puts the X side down. And that gives them 12 hours on one side, 12 hours on the other. Some folks may tell you that you need to turn them more often than that. I've been incubating eggs for decades, and this works just fine. I space the eggs, and I don't have to add any extra humidity. You're supposed to keep the humidity at around 65%. Well, the VoodooGarden is perfect for that because there's a lot of humidity in this room. I don't put it perfectly because, let's face it, a chicken doesn't care what the humidity is. They just sit on the eggs on a dirt nest or on a few leaves and grass and stuff. So it's not exact science. You don't have to worry about that. Eggs are very good at getting themselves hatched. So what I do is I have 15 of them in here. It takes 21 days for them to go from the first day to the hatch day. Now I have approximately from the day of this filming, not too awful long for them to come out. So the next time you tune in, you're going to hear, with any luck, cross my fingers because not all eggs will hatch, but with a little bit of luck, I'm going to have some little chicks hopping around inside the VoodooGarden. I'm going to have them in a brooder, which is a container with a light source to keep them warm, but I'm going to have to keep them inside for about a week or two until they're old enough to go into a fenced area inside the chicken coop outside. But for a little while, they're going to be little voodoo birds. Now, I want to show you something, but I have to turn off the light in order to show you. It has a little light that I can turn on or off. It doesn't really matter, but I like to have the light on so that when I come into the VoodooGarden, I can actually see where these things are and don't bump into them with my feet. Now, I want to show you something. Oh, sorry, I bumped you. After about maybe 5 days of incubating, you can take your eggs and you can do what's called candling. And what that means is one flashlight that's very bright and an egg, and you hold it very carefully. You got to do this in a dark room. And let me see if you can get this on video. I'm going to turn off the light over here. You put the light up against the egg, and if you're lucky, I know this doesn't show up very well here, but you can see the dark spot inside of there. That's towards the bottom. And you can also see the blood vessels. And I'm not sure that it's showing on the video, but you can see the blood vessels. And at times, after I think about maybe a week and a half to 2 weeks, you can see the creature, the little bird, moving around inside the egg. It's a beautiful thing. Now, you're supposed to do that with all the eggs to make sure that you have fertile eggs, because if you incubate eggs that aren't fertile, now look at this one. Look over to your right, you can actually see something moving around in there. Oh, that's just beautiful. That is life. That is new life moving around inside of there. Yep, they're a living, breathing creature now. I've already candled all of the eggs. Now I'm going to close this so that the temperature can go right back up where it's supposed to be. You don't want to leave it open too awful long. Okay, I'm going to back you up and turn on the lights, okay? I just love this. I absolutely love this. Such a simple thing as hatching out new chicks. It's a beautiful thing, a new life from an egg. I could go on and on about this because it it astounds me how beautiful life is and how it can definitely manifest itself in so many different ways. Something as delicate as an eggshell holding a new life, and something that is so simple as an egg yolk and the egg whites develops with a little bit of time and a little bit of care into little baby chicks. Oh, they're so cute. You're going to love them when they come out. I'll be having them. I went and bought a large plastic tub, and I'm going to put a light above it, and I'm going to put in shredded paper and wood chips and stuff. And I'm going to have them here in the Voodoo Garden. It's going to take up a lot of space, but I think they're very well worth it. We're going to have them here in the Voodoo Garden, and they're going to be standing on my hands and my shoulder and pooping all over me for just a little bit of time. But I wanted to show you this because it's something that's right here, and you're going to notice it. So I wanted to explain this before people were asking questions. These are the new Voodoo chicks. Yes, they are. And so if you're children and your friends and your family want to see how this actually occurs, I'm going to be showing you every step of the way. I showed you, here they are incubating, and they're well on their way. The next time you tune in to the Voodoo Garden, they should be hatched. But what I'm going to do is, as they hatch, I'm going to bring the camera over, and I'm going to show the process of them hatching out of a shell. So if you want to educate yourself, educate your children, entertain your family, this is something I think that you might be interested in tuning in because it's so beautiful to watch them come out. They look so weak, yet the things they have to do to survive it boggles the mind, and I'll go into that later on. But that's just the chicks right now. We have other things going on in the Voodoo Garden. And one of the things is this bucket of supposed garbage. These are the clippings. This is the refuse of the Voodoo Garden. You know, I have some plants that are beautiful, some plants that are in flux right now. That's a nice way of saying they're not doing so well. But as I grow the plants, I'm always clipping off leaves and stems and shaping them and pruning them and making them look nice. Well, all of the extra stuff doesn't go to waste. I don't just throw it in the trash. What I do is I just use this pot and I throw them in here. But what I've been doing, and what I'll do is I'll take this outside and throw it in my compost pile when I start compost. I'm starting my compost pile right away outside. So when you get compost from me, you know that part of the compost is actually made out of plants here in the Voodoo Garden. But what I want to get at is there's different ways to help your plants when you're growing inside. You don't have to go outside and make compost. You don't have to buy all kinds of expensive fertilizer. I use compost tea, and that's right here in the bucket. That's a wonderful, mild fertilizer that you cannot overdose your plants on. It's the most natural, beautiful thing that you could feed your soil to feed your plants. But there are other ways to get good results for that. Now I'm going to show you that. So right over here, I have my pumpkin. Remember I planted that pumpkin? It's vining all over the place. It's doing beautifully. Well, it's doing so well, it's starting to flower. But when a pumpkin plant flowers, the first thing it'll do is, those of you who garden, you know that a pumpkin plant or a squash plant, a lot of plants that put out these big flowers, they'll put out the male flowers first. And then later on down the line, they'll put out female flowers. You may wonder, why do they do that? I have a theory, and I don't have it based on any science. I have it based on just observation and thinking like a plant. Okay, if you're a plant, the first thing you're going to want to do is put out the male flowers, because the male flowers have nothing but pollen to offer. Okay, that's all they have to offer is pollen. Now the female flowers, when they come out on these vines, like pumpkin, cucumber, things like that, they have a little fruit at the base of the flower. Now if that flower, that's called a female flower, and that's how you can tell it's a female flower. If that flower gets pollinated, that fruit will grow. The flower will eventually die and then fall off, and the fruit will continue to grow and form a fruit with seeds inside of it. Well, if it doesn't get pollinated, generally, the fruit will turn yellowish and fall off the plant. That means it wasn't pollinated or wasn't pollinated properly. So what I'm getting at is the plant puts out male flowers because they're low stress. It doesn't take much to put them out. It takes a lot more energy to build a little fruit and put a flower on it. So that's why they don't put out the female flowers first. They're basically testing the waters. They put out the male flowers. The male flowers have pollen, and some of them, like these, the pumpkin flowers, have a little bit of nectar in these little tiny cups inside the flower, way at the bottom. I looked with a magnifying glass. This attracts the pollinators, and what I'm thinking is, plants aren't stupid. So what they do is they put out these male flowers, and if there's any pollinating insects, the insects come over there, start pollinating the flowers. The plant gets its flowers pollinated and goes, hey, there are insects here. Now I can actually invest energy into putting out the female flowers. Because why put out female flowers when they're just going to die from no pollinating insects? Better to test the water with something that's not as high stress. That would be the male flower. So this is putting out male flowers, and then instead of just cutting them all off, what I'm doing is I'm pollinating them to let the plant know that there's a pollinator here. Me, I am Mr. B. So I'm pollinating these flowers, and then as soon as the male flowers die, I've been tossing them in the soil over here. I was going to toss them over here, but I got lazy one day, and I tossed them over here in my papaya plant soil. I just threw them down there. I thought, oh, I'll get to them. And, me, I'm forgetful, so I didn't get to them. And what happened was something absolutely beautiful. They started decomposing, and you know how I'm always harping on about the living, breathing soil. If you want to have good, healthy plants, you want to get your soil to be something more than just where the roots are. You want that soil to be full of life, full of bacteria, mold, fungus, all the different things that cause soil to be alive. Now this soil, I believe, is very much alive. So when I tossed these things on top of it, I didn't put any dirt on it or anything like that. What happened was the soil recognized that there was food, and it sent out its little army to break the food down to feed itself. It's a beautiful thing. Life is a beautiful thing. Now I'm going to take my camera and I'm going to put it right up close to show you exactly what happened and how it's happening. So take a look at this. Now it doesn't look like much. It just looks like junk thrown onto the soil. Now the beauty of this is when you get in really close. What I found out is my camera is wonderful at getting really close. I'm going to get as close as I can so that you can see what's going on way down at soil level. Look at all the white fuzz. That is the mold taking advantage of what I'm offering it. And it just gets crazy and grows all over the organic matter on the soil. See the white? Yep, it's just reaching all those tendrils in, and on the top you can see the spores. Yeah, that's the actual fungus. I'm holding this as still as I possibly can. But you can see that it's decomposing these blossoms and other stuff that I just tossed down there. And I don't do anything special. I just threw it on there because I was too lazy to take it out of here. And then I noticed this. So yes, you can compost directly onto your soil. Just throw stuff down there. And when your soil gets moist, there will be fungus growing. Don't be afraid of fungus and mold when it's doing this kind of stuff. That's what it does, and that's what it does really well. This is a healthy, active, thriving soil. And that's what I keep mentioning about promoting in your indoor and outdoor gardening. Keep your soil healthy and it will take care of your plants. Kind of neat, isn't it? Yeah. And that's with nothing more than a couple leaves and flowers. And one thing I didn't notice is that pumpkin flowers right here, see? Pumpkin flowers, they have a beautiful smell. It's almost like honeysuckle is what it smells like. And when you're gardening, whether it's outdoors or indoors, you can actually eat these flowers. They have a very smooth, buttery flavor to them. And I think it's Middle Eastern cooking. They take these flowers and they batter dip them lightly, and then they fry them in a little oil and put a little salt and pepper on them, and they eat them. And they're absolutely delicious. So you can take the yellow part and, wow, that is good. And you can put them on salads. You can put them on salads. They don't keep well, so when you cut them off, use them right away, okay? Don't cut them off until you're ready to use them. The plant puts out more flowers than it can possibly use. And once I'm done pollinating them and they start to close, their life is done. But what I'm doing right now is I'm putting them on the soil. And what that's doing with my plants is it's feeding my plants. You saw how the fungus is working. And that's great. It's actually taking this stuff, breaking it down, and taking it back to the soil. The cycle of life is going on in the Voodoo Garden. It's absolutely something else. I love the cycle of life. And I want to show you something. Remember, this plant here used to be big and beautiful and full. It's looking a little peaked now. That's because it's ending the end of its life. I haven't been taking as good a care of it as I should have because, remember, I did the cuttings. I did the cuttings from this plant, the purple passion plant, and the spider plant babies. Well, what happened is after I did the cuttings from all those plants, I was looking at the mother plant, the purple passion plant, and it had aphids on it. I have no idea where they came from. It's just strange. Out of a black hole appeared aphids, and they were all over one plant. I mean, it's frozen outside. They could have come from outside. I have no idea what happened. Well, there were aphids, and I don't question what I see. I wondered where they came from, but I didn't question it. I figured, well, it doesn't matter where they came from. They're here right now. I could have sprayed the plant and tried to save it, but what I'm doing is I'm replacing that plant with the new cuttings that I took. So I figured, why am I going to even fight this? I took it outside and I dumped it off over by the woodpile. I know people wanted cuttings from it, but I don't send cuttings through the mail. It's just so risky. It's hard to do. There's a big chance of failure. It costs money. I'm just not going to do that. And they're very inexpensive. When you go to Walmart during the growing season, you can get your own plant and you don't have to worry about it coming through the mail all dried and frozen or anything like that. So anyway, I tossed that plant out. This one right here is not diseased, but I just don't have the room for it in here. So what I'm going to do, because I'm going to have these baby chicks here. So this plant is going to be leaving the Voodoo Garden very soon because it's ended what it can do in the amount of soil that it has. But the cuttings all took root. Same thing with the spider plant. I'm going to make a big spider plant, but not right yet, but I have all the cuttings. And the thing about it is, I showed you how I did that. Every single cutting rooted, and I'm going to show you that. Actually, I'm going to show you that right now. Right here underneath my new lights, and by the way, not all the lights are on. I turned a couple of them off. Oh, they're beautiful. The light in here is absolutely perfect for growing, but I turned a couple of them off so that it isn't quite so stark when I'm doing my filming. But look over here. I have all the purple passion cuttings and they're all doing absolutely beautiful. I have the spider plant cuttings, not a single one wilted, and I have the arrowheads. They're putting out new leaves and they're looking fantastic. And another thing, I was making guacamole not too long ago. I tried it one more time. You know me, it's my white whale. I'm like Captain Ahab, and avocado is my white whale. I want to grow it because my grandmother grew one, and I want to have an avocado no matter what it takes. I planted this a while back, and look, it's got a new shoot coming out. I've got a new method of growing this. You know how avocados will sometimes get that brown around the edges? I believe I was overwatering it. So I'm going to try again, and I'm going to try not to overwater it. So there is that. There's another thing. There's a couple things I wanted to show you, not just bragging about my little starts. There's this pepper plant, and I forgot what it's called. Hold on a second. Let me move the camera up here. Right up here. This is called a Pusa Jwala. A Pusa Jwala. It puts out little tiny, very super hot peppers that are used in some kind of, I think, Peruvian cooking or something like that. It's supposed to put out an abundance of them. And look at this. It's already putting out flowers. And it's just an itty bitty plant. I've been pruning it back to make it sturdy because this one's going out in my garden this year. Yes, it is. So I got this growing underneath the lights and it decided to flower. No, I'm not going to allow it to produce peppers. I'm going to pinch all those off, but I wanted to show you first because if it's doing this amount of flowers under just these lights, can you imagine what this is going to do out in the garden? Oh, and by the way, yeah, over here, this little thing, this is cotton. Yes, cotton, the fabric of our lives. I decided to grow a cotton plant this year. I might put it out in the garden. I'm really not quite so sure. Oh, this year's garden is going to be absolutely beautiful. You know, the Voodoo Garden did keep me sane throughout the winter. I had plenty of things going on here to keep me happy, to keep me balanced. But spring is in the air, and I'm thinking spring. I have two boxcar willy tomatoes that I'm going to be growing this season outside. I have them started upstairs because for some reason, when I was growing them down here, they didn't do as well. So I took them out of the Voodoo Garden and I put them in a window, a sunny window. So they're actually getting full sun from my eastern window now that the sun's at a different angle, and they're doing absolutely beautiful. I wanted to show you this really quick because it just caught my attention when I was moving the camera. A sunflower. Yeah, this is actually a sunflower. They're from seeds that a friend sent me from her giant sunflower. She sent me seeds from that, and I decided, why not? You know, people may tell you, hey, you can't grow a sunflower inside. Really? You can't? I'm going to see if this thing will grow actual flowers out of it. I don't have any illusions of it becoming a giant sunflower. Sometimes the seeds from those giant sunflowers do not produce the actual plant that they came from. They produce smaller sunflowers. But there's always a but involved in here. But what I did was I looked around. And you know, you've heard of sunflowers called mammoth gray stripe. They're the standard sunflower that gets really huge. It's supposed to get like 10 to 14 feet. Well, I found one that got even bigger than that. It gets, I think, 14 to 16 feet. I'm going to plant that, not this one. This is going to grow indoors, but I have the seeds for that other one. I'm going to plant in the lower Uncton garden in one of my raised beds with all the compost in it, with all the sun in the world. And I've never done this before, grown them in such an open area like that. I'm going to see if I can actually get a sunflower to full height out in the lower Uncton garden. The problem is I have hurricane force winds that blow through here like mad. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have big poles with strings holding this sunflower from falling over, because it's going to be a monolithic plant and a monolithic undertaking. But I'm going to put this back over here. This is what's going on in the Voodoo Garden. A little bit of death over here in the soil, feeding the soil, the circle of life, and new life coming out in the Voodoo Garden. Just a little update. Tune in next time. There's going to be some beautiful sounds coming down in the Voodoo Garden. Until then, this is Ray and his 15 little co-stars. We're out of here. You guys okay in there?